Hello future tech leaders, I'm Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Let's go to the next section here. Moving further with agentless migration. Here we said as part of agentless migration, you will have to install an appliance. As part of this appliance, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to create these resources for agentless migration. You have to check for permissions over here. What is the server requirements that you have? What are the port access requirements that you would have? Now, all this information will be coming from your IT teams, what servers they have. What is the kind of workloads that they have created? Do they have required licenses? Now, this is a very big issue which comes when you look at migration. I am talking specially in terms of India. Here, once you go to people, once you go to organizations, there are still a lot of them who have Windows 2008 or even older licenses, and all of them are what you say, free trial or cracked kind of licenses. They never had to do anything with it because all these things, what's being taken care by the internal team. All their software server running fine on that. But now, once it comes to now, the business size has grown, right? And the only option for them is to migrate. And once they are now looking at migration, Microsoft, I'm not sure how many of you are aware about this. There is something with a SAM initiative. Software audit processes. Well, they were checking for how many companies have the licenses. I know about that. Now Microsoft has stopped that initiative. It says we don't want to go ahead. Go behind SAM initiative. Now, what we want to do is we want to help people to migrate. Now, if anybody who has to migrate, they will have to have a new license, or you create a VM which is with license, whichever way you prefer. If you want to do data, if you want to do migration, VM migration, which means you need to have latest version, they just license. Or you go for license which is available on. That is VMs with licenses. Right. You have to check for the entire network. What are the ports being opened? All that information is available here. In terms of what are the resources required from on-premises, which ports should be open? Again, it does not contain all the information. There will be a lot of other non-Microsoft applications, third-party provided resources. Even those things have to be taken care, which is not being mentioned here. That is something that we will have to work as consultants. Whether the third-party license which has been procured, can it be migrated to Azure? Generally, my experience has been there has been no major concern there. People have been able to move their licenses to Azure cloud or any other cloud. When you go through, another example that you see over here. Another solution that you see over here like Follow All 2 or any such security-based solutions. They say that, Ku, why are you migrating this entire machine? You don't need to do that. Just go to Azure Marketplace. We already have a pre-existing VMware there, right? You just create a BOL machine and put this license key over there. It will work. Now tell me what is easier for you. Migrating onto a 10 GB of firewall solution. Right. Or creating a VM on Azure. License anyways. They are providing you that facility to migrate that. Config file is just move that config file there. Job. A lot of places. You don't have to migrate. That's what I'm telling you. To first understand what are the resources here. And are there workarounds which will avoid that migration? I'm sorry, I can't help you. But other applications I can help you. Because that's where you have pre-existing resources and you can talk to respective members over there. As far as tool is concerned, here you have Azure Migrate Server Migration Tool. As part of this tool, you have more assessment finding out. Like I said earlier, there are two of them if you see. Migrate servers. Right. And then is migration of database. You have your web apps migration, your data box migration. Right? If you look at your migration of web applications, this is actually not a server migration. This is actually migrating the content that you have inside your web server. A server or Internet Information Services or any other web server that you have, virtual directories that you have. That content you can migrate over here. As far as large data is concerned, like Chinna was mentioning about in his scenario, we can go for a data box over here. Right? First step that you see is discover, assess and migrate servers. In terms of assessment, you have to check. In this assessment, what it checks is how many of these machines have latest licenses. What is the size? How many data disks they have? Is there anything called as read disks over here? All that information, all that verification is being done over here. Again, if you are looking at agent base or agentless, it will check that agents has been installed or not. If you are looking at agentless, it will not worry. It will not. You will not have to worry on that. If you are going for agent-based migration, it will ensure you have the mass agent or mobility service being installed on those machines. There are a number of pre-existing tools that you have. There are a lot of migration tools that you can check for. Cloudomize Azure Migrate Server Assessment. In my case, if I recall, what I was using is CloudIn. CloudIn as a tool for checking for a lot of these options. There are plenty of other tools as well. And you can check for. If you look at your Azure Migrate, now this is what is happening is, if you see this process, this is a process where you initiate from Azure, connect to your on-premises environment, and then perform the migration. The second approach over here could be go to your config manager. Remember, we have installed configuration manager, process manager, right? Now for doing it again, it is not magic. You'll have to go to your ASR and there you have something called as infrastructure setup. you have to download the OVA file, which is, I'm not sure if which is around 120 GB, something like that. It actually has the configuration of all those machines. You have to download that OVA file within your environment, install that. And once you install it, it will automatically run these processes behind the scenes. That is your config server process server. And then you have to install Mobility Agent on the machines that you want to migrate. Right. If you're going for agent-based migration, once you have done that part using the configuration manager itself, you can do the migration. Are you getting it? From the local environment, you can start the migration, which is from on-premises to Azure. This is the reverse process. This is from Azure to on-premises. Right? Both the ways will work. It's not a problem with that. Here, it becomes easier for you to track this. You have more options for the tools over here, which is not there when you go to the configuration manager. Here you can use separate tools for assessment. It will check for. It will scan the complete environment. Right. And then you can go ahead with replication over here. While you are doing this migration, it will check for whether you have a. This is for when you say on-premises appliance, which means this is your agent list. Agent list implementation where your appliance has a public IP. Please understand this. Without having a public IP, you will not be able to identify this over here. We should be able to understand and work with existing resources. Once you have identified your appliance will give you all the information. It will scan the complete environment. How many machines you have? What is the details within those machines? It's like an agent itself. But this agent is not installed on the individual machines. This agent is installed on the environment. It will help you scan that processes and get you details in terms of whatever machines do you want. Once you have got these machines, then you can go ahead and select as part of phase 1 which machines you want to migrate. Right. You can create these resources here. Specify what will be the members on Azure environment, their target settings, your virtual network. It will check for all the required licenses. Whether you have a pre-built, pre-existing license. Now here, one of the common questions is, once we are migrating, don't we already have a license with us? Now again, this depends on scenario to scenario. Let me look at the first scenario which I mentioned earlier. When you are doing the migration, customer does not have new license. They have an older license. If they have an older license, some of these things will fail when you are trying to do a migrate. Because it will not allow you install the mobility service. Second member over here is when you are installing these resources, when you are doing this migration. Even if you have, say, license 2012 onwards for Windows Server. Right? Now, in those scenarios, whether your licenses is part of software assurance. Please be careful. Your licenses have to be part of software assurance. Only those licenses can be migrated. Other licenses can. Then, am I making sense for you all? Gochira. This is primarily in terms of licenses, which are software-based licenses. If you have a software-based license, you have to make sure they support migration. You can check for a vendor or especially in case of Windows Server licenses. I can tell you that. Once we are clear with this, specify the compute settings. Now this part I have already mentioned earlier. Once it comes to compute settings, whenever you see machines over here in your on-premises environment, they are always over-provisioned. Your machines that you have is always over-provisioned. Why am I saying that? Because in on-premises environment, my observation, I'm telling you, whenever people purchase machines, they don't purchase for immediate requirement. They will purchase it for next 5 years. Do you agree with me? Reason being, anyways, it takes me a lot of hard work to get the sanctions from all departmental heads, finance head and all. There's an entire bureaucracy that I have. If I'm getting something, if I'm getting approvals, at least let me get approval for a higher configuration. Because now, if it is not working there, if the software doesn't work, there's some problem. I can't go back again after 2 days of saying that I want to increase the machine, get me a new machine, or I would want to add a RAM or CPU here. Right. I will always go for over-provisioning. In these cases, once it comes to cloud, you need to. In many cases, I'm telling you, I have gone ahead with half of the current resources. Because, and again, that decision has to be taken. That decision has to be taken based on how much is the current consumption. To profiling and other reports, you will come to know whether the current consumption of resources is 20%, 40%, or it is going to 80%, right? If it is going to 80%, which means I'm wrong, I will have to provision more resources on cloud, right? It could happen because that was the problem area, critical workload. It could be a good why customer wanted to go for cloud in the first place. Are you getting it? Most of your assessment in terms of performance will get you that information, will get you that details. Once you have specified these details, specify your disk options, disk settings. And once you're done with that, you start the replication process. Once it is done, it will show you how much data has been migrated. It will first migrate the contents, the storage. That the VHD file or the complete details that you have. If you're moving a VMware machine, it will translate that into VHD. Right. And that will take slightly longer. It does not take that much time, but it takes slightly longer than a normal VHD or a normal hypervisor setup. And once that replication is done, you go ahead with migration. These steps will help you. This morning I was testing, from AWS to Azure. I have installed the appliance server and I have installed the software. And when I was trying to discover from Azure, like it was spinning and spinning for a while for hours together, and it did not discover and it did not throw error also. And I ended up shutting down AWS servers because like I have to take T2 or T2 medium to install the appliance software and other software. Any idea in need? I have not worked with AWS. I think Arjun should be able to help us with that. Actually, I have not worked either. I am the one who worked on AWS. I did work on that. But it was the discovery did not happen at the Azure, and it was like, no, we discover. That's where it did not happen. I have to check for that because the on-premises environment, I have been able to do it multiple times, but across cloud I have not done it. I'll have to check for that. There are any common known issues or what could be the problem there? I'll check this up. Think. Did you check for the logs? I did check for the loss. He did not give anything. I didn't. Let me try it again tomorrow. Let me also check if I have anything. I'll discuss that. In terms of other resources that we need to check. For once, it comes to your Azure environment, could be services like Service Bus or any kind of application communication between environments. If you have gateway setup being done for past services like Logic Apps, right? Your log analytics, like I was mentioning a moment ago. Whenever something is getting created or discovery happening, we can go ahead and check for log analytics, or even for that matter, check for activity log. What is the activity happening? Even if something is failing or taking time, activity log can help us understand what could be the areas where the problem is happening. Again, in terms of encryption, decryption, we can make use of Azure Key Vault services. In terms of migration, of what's the migration is being done, you can check for those migrated servers, log in into that. See if all the data is being migrated correctly. See if everything is working fine. You may begin with 1 or 2 machines to start with. Can you see this? Discover server versus 442, out of which 6 has been selected for migration for replication. 1 has been successfully done. Check for how the migration has happened and whether all the contents are appropriate over here. Once you have checked these resources, associate a public IP over here. See if you are able to log in, or if you want to connect using a Bastion service, you can do that without having a public IP. The purpose here is to checking if the data is being migrated correctly. And once that part is being done, we are through this process. In terms of agent-based migration, all the steps will remain same. The only change over here that you will see is, like I said earlier, downloading the OOA file. Installing mobility service on each of these resources. Right. That will be the change over here. If you look at the VMware preparation, If you look at another set of components in terms of security, here you have your key vault. As far as part of your key vault resources, this is the primary member where it handles three basic aspects, which is certificates. Certificate is the one important part aspect. Second is your secrets, and third is the encryption, decryption keys. Now those components will be part of your resource over here in Key Vault. Now using these resources. And what else we are doing is the other aspects. The other aspects over here is providing permissions for the user, who will be behaving as a migration user. Right. In terms of replication, what is the strategy that you want to go for replication? Whether you want to go for failover, failback. Now this actually failover, failback is not part of your migration strategy. This is actually part of your site recovery. Here, the only option that one should go for right now is full replication. Correct. But if you see this member, that is Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery can be used for different purposes. It is used for disaster recovery scenarios. It can also be used for migration. In this scenario, if you see, it is showcasing how ASR can be used for replicating or a data migrate, VM migration from on-premises environment to Azure environment. This is something which I already mentioned about installing mobility service. Once you have installed this and you run your migration tool, it will check all the members which have mobility service installed on it. Right. Once that part is being done, you'll have to download this application. That is over file. Configure that within your VMware. This will help you get all the required details for configuration server and processor. Once this over file is being configured within your on-premises environment, you will have to associate this with your Azure environment. Right. What it does is it be it on behind the scene. It establishes connectivity with your Azure environment. Once that part is being done, go to specific machines. Boot into those machines. Install mobility service. This will restart your systems. And once you run this again, once you do the discovery again, now it will start checking for all those machines which has mobility agent being installed. There is no additional cost for mobility agent installation. What you are being charged over here is amount of data that you are. It is charging for the bandwidth that you are using for transferring data. Once you have moved these resources, check what is the environment you have. vSphere environment or hypervisor environment. Check for type of machines that you have. Now, whatever I have been talking about, in perspective of, that is entirely true with VMware. This is not applicable for hypervisor machines. Right. This is your file, which is TRAB file. And this is OVF file. I understand, corrected. Is an OVF file. Now with this OVF file, everything that is required for configuration, association with Azure, everything is inside this OVF file. I will see here. These are the screenshots of what steps they should be performance. Chitna, I am sure you have already done these steps into your AWS environment. I did it. I want to do the VMware. Did you do it using VMware on ABOS or no? I say it's a. I'm sure it's a. Have installed instances. I have created 3 instances, 1 appliance instance, 1 Windows instance, 1 Linux instance. I have created 3 of them and I discovered and assess. Right now, you have taken a Windows environment on Oz. Am I correct? I did the Linux also. I did both. Let me check for that. What could be the issue in terms of discovery? Once you're done with this, all other steps will remain same. In terms of our replication migration, all the other steps will remain same, right? Specifying what machines you want to select, what is the number of CPU cores or what is the disk, what is the RAM that you would associate. All those things will remain same over here. Some of these steps are common between agent-based migration and agentless migration. Once you're done with this, do a test migration and verify whatever contents have been migrated, whether they are working properly or not. Here, if you look at the labs over here, there are 2 labs which I would recommend you all to work with. One lab is module number 12 of Azure tree. This is where you have complete details of Azure site recovery, and there is one more which I want all of you all to look at, is this will take good amount of time. Chinna, I would recommend you will try this first before you go to Oz. This is creating a complete environment for a complete environment using hypervisor, and it will showcase how the migration process happens. This is slightly lengthy to take around 1.5 hours, but this should help you in what you are doing right now. I posted this link to the chat window. For me, it will take 3 to 4 hours. It takes time in terms of data replication. Otherwise, it did not. Doesn't take much time because the size of each of these VMs is pretty big, you know. That's why it takes time. Otherwise, it should not take that much time. That's why the steps are concerned. You can try for this. Lab migrating Hyper VMs to Azure by using Azure Migrate Correct. Yes, this is for TDO 4. Perfect, nice. These are 2 labs where you can do the actual migration process and see how this happens. But the only difference here is these are not on-premises resources. These are Azure resources. This is, in sense, the entire environment is being built on top of Azure environment. But as far as the processes or the steps that we mentioned, agent-based migration, agent test migration, all these things you all can try out there. Guys, I would need to stop here for today. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.